What started off as a joke in Tim Armstrong's awful movie Larry is Dead, the band The Transplants would go on to become an actual band in real life. Tim Armstrong would group together with Travis Barker of Blink-182 and they would form the punk rock supergroup known as Transplants. You know, they'd bring in Skinhead Rob for some screamy time rapping. In 2002, when this thing dropped, it blew my mind because I was a really big fan of both these bands. I really loved Rancid and I really loved Blink-182. And Blink-182 were powerhouses in the mainstream. So at the time, this was kind of unique for Travis Barker to be looking to the scene and propping them up a little bit. So I was like, oh man, that's so sick that Travis is using his notoriety to shine a light on the actual punk scene that gave him life to begin with. So, hey ladies, how's it going? Dan Frampton here, and today we're going to do a bit of a retrospective on this Transplants record and see if it was a good idea or if it held up. Because all I really remembered from this record is that one song would go on to be in that shampoo commercial, and that shampoo commercial kind of put a sour taste in my mouth, and I was like, I never want to listen to this band ever again. But in retrospect, exactly 20 years later, I think that might have been a really great idea. So I'm going into this thing super skeptical, and it's going to start with the song Romper Stomper, and we're getting this heavy guitar lead, and then these synths come in, and I'm like, oh yeah, right, this thing is filled with synths and rapping and stuff. Right. It starts to feel pretty nu metal right away, and then we get this badass scream rapping that only Skinhead Rob can provide. So by the end of the first track, I'm thinking, this is a solid opener, and it's kind of a badass track. We would go on to the song Tall Cans in the Air, which is a pretty solid, huge single off this thing, and the hook, the chorus, endlessly sing-alongable, very tough, very hard, but also very catchy. We get Tim Armstrong mumbling his way through it like only Tim Armstrong can, and we're starting to feel how all these elements of these guys are gonna bounce off one another. It's a good little single to get the MTV crowd bopping, which was the target audience at the time. Then we'd go on to a song called DJ, which was a little bit of a slower cut. It got a little bit emotional, but still, Skinhead Rob is gonna be screaming his ass off. And while Skinhead Rob is doing his little shouty thing, Tim Armstrong is still being very tender. And then we would move on to the track Diamonds and Guns, and this was the track that would go on to become that shampoo commercial. And when I heard it, I couldn't believe it for the first time. I was like, what's going on? We got Tim Armstrong, this guy was like the 90s punk rock superstar, and now he's selling music to shampoo commercials. I absolutely could not get behind it, but today, I'm like, man, it's really great that these guys did that one thing and got really paid for it, because now they're just living life. But when you strip away that intro, that very catchy shampoo commercial intro, this thing just kind of sounds like a Tom Waits song. So yeah, after 20 years, I could finally say this is a bop that is actually pretty good. Track 5 is called Quick Death, and we get Davey Havoc on the cut. And this is another thing that I want to mention about this record that I think is really great. They're not only using their own notoriety to shine a light on the punk rock scene, they're actually bringing their friends in and getting them paid too. Very sick. This track has a very chaotic skeletal structure, and Davey Havoc's voice is very distinct. Track 6 is called Sad But True, another kind of emo cut, and it's not the Sad But True that was written by Metallica. This is not a Metallica cover. This is an organ ballad that's very soulful. It's a song about loss and mourning and how it's sad but true. And it's great that they're all providing their own perspective with death and stuff like that. It's a good song to listen to if you're going through some stuff. We're gonna keep that emotional weight going into the next track called Way on My Mind. And this song is gonna be bold enough to feature Brody Dahl on the mix. So far this record is just bop after memorable hook after catchy line. Tim's songwriting balanced with the drumming of Travis Barker actually make for a really, really good combination. It just feels really open and honest and raw, and it's cool that they wanted to bring this weird ass music to the mainstream, because they could have just, did this pop record to kind of guarantee success, but no, they were being very experimental and all over the place on this thing, and to that I strongly respect. But track 8 is where I think that this record truly shines. The song is called 117, and it just feels like these three main guys just demonstrating their personalities times 11. Travis Barker's drumming is bold and in your face. Rob is just ripping through these tough guy bars, and Tim, well, Tim is just being Tim. And this track just is fast and heavy and loud. It's just everything that I want Transplants to be. But then the record kinda slows to a crawl. These next two tracks kinda suck. Track number 9, called California Babylon, is in the same kind of shampoo commercial type vibe, but it's not nearly as good of a song. And then we'd go into another track with Roadie Doll called We Trusted You, which actually has a pretty good hook, good little chorus on this thing, but it's not very memorable. It's kind of a boring song if I'm going to be honest with you. It's just a pop rock song about friends betraying you, you know? And hearing Roadie Doll on these cuts made me kind of think about Tim Armstrong as a record label person today, because he has the Interrupters that he's always working with, and the Interrupters have that vocalist Amy Interrupter, and she kind of sounds a lot like Roadie Doll. So I think that might be a whole Roadie Doll replacement conspiracy theory that I might create in another video. But anyway, this record goes on. At track 11, we got D-R-E-A-M, Dream. You know, it's very inspired by that Wu-Tang song, Cream. But instead of cash ruling everything around me, it's drugs ruling everything around me, and this song is just so much hip-hop. I feel like I'm in California kicking back when this song is ripping. Then the record is going to close out with a song called Down in Oakland, and I think this is the weirdest song to use as a closer. This is kind of just like a spaghetti western cartoon theme song. It's a very good spaghetti western cartoon theme song, but as a closer, very strange. There's a lot of tough, hard things on this record. There's a lot of catchy things on this record. There's a lot of soulful and tuneful things on this record that could have closed this thing out. But no, they went goofy. But I'm kind of glad that they went wacky and goofy. It shows that they're like willing to experiment and do crazy things. So even though as a kid I gave up on this thing because of that shampoo commercial, I gotta give it mad props. It wasn't afraid to be weird. It wasn't afraid to be avant-garde. It was just all these guys' creative ideas that they couldn't do in the regular bands. They're like, let's just get together and do all this weird stuff together. It feels like a passion project. It feels like friends being friends, bros being bros, and seeing what's gonna happen. But because I gave up on them way back when, that means I haven't checked out their other 2 records that they put out. So I might go ahead and do that since it is official. The verdict on this thing is that yes, it holds up, and it certainly was not a mistake. What do you think of this record? Let me know. If you like this video, also let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you're cool as hell, and until my next upload, watch another upload.